An Introduction to Measuring Wood, US Customary Units Edition. In this video, I'm going to try to explain the complexities of navigating the various ways to measure wood that you can buy for lumber. Some math is going to be used in this presentation. Full disclosure, I am not known for my writing skills. The question to ask is 1 equal to 1? Simple math is easy. 1 equals 1, and 1 plus 1 equals 2, and 2 plus 2 equals 4. Math with wood is much harder. Depending on the type of wood that you might purchase, the dimensions that wood is measured differently. Let's start with the most common types of wood that you purchase from a traditional hardware store. These include 100% wood products, known as lumber or construction lumber, and also composite wood, for example, plywood or MDF. The most common thing you find is a 2x4. This is 2 inches high by 4 inches wide and is generally stacked this way in a lumber store. This wood comes of arbitrary length. Generally 8 feet is the type of length that you will find. So wood is a 2x4 by 8 rather than 2x4 by 96 using the same unit of inches. So we have wood height and wood width. However, wood math for construction wood is not simple math. 1 does not equal 1. In fact, 1 equals 3/4. 2 does not equal 2. 2 actually equals 3/4 plus 3/4, which is 1.5. So in this wood, which is 2x4, the height dimension is actually 1.5 inches, not 2 inches. Now, 2 plus 2 is not 4. We know that 2 is 1.5, so 1.5 plus 1.5 is 3. However, wood is not, for 4 inches long, wood is not 3 inches, it's in fact 3.5 inches. So the general rule of construction lumber is, when measuring inches for width and height, you subtract 1/2 of an inch. For a 2x4, it's actually 1.5 inches high by 3.5 inches wide. A 2x3, for example, is 1.5 inches high by 2.5 inches wide. So these two 1.5 inches high is 3 inches, but in an example of a 4x4, that's actually 3.5 inches. You can see that there is in fact actually a difference here. However, if we move from measuring a 2x4 to a 1x4, the same rule does not apply. You do not subtract 1/2 an inch from 1 to get 1/2 an inch by 3.5 inches. You can also get wood in dowels, either round dowels or square dowels. And if the dowel is 1 inch, it's 1 inch in diameter, or 1 inch square, unlike the measurements we were just talking about before for construction lumber. So let's talk about fractions. We've described a 1x4 as 3/4 of an inch thick. What about wood that is 3/4 inch? What actual measurement is that? You'll find for composite woods such as plywood, this is a 3/4 inch plywood and a 1/2 inch plywood and a 1/4 inch plywood, that the actual measurement for the wood is the actual size. So we have 3/4 inch is 3/4 an inch, and so forth. The same applies to dowels of smaller sizes. This is a 3/8 inch square dowel, so its actual measurement is 3/8 of an inch. In the larger sheets of composite wood such as plywood, in addition to these sizes, you can get 7/16 or 23/32, which are the actual measurements. So we've been talking about dimensional lumber or construction lumber. There is also non-dimensional or rough cut lumber, and this uses a different form of measurement. In rough cut lumber, you'll see 4/4, which actually means approximately 1 inch in thickness, and 6/4, 8/4, etc. So 2 inches for about an 8/4. Now I'll also cover pricing for rough cut wood in another post, because that pricing is based by board feet, which is a different type of measurement. So let's recap what we've talked about in this presentation. N equals N minus a half, where N is greater than 1, generally in units of inches. However, N equals 3/4 when N equals 1. N also equals N when we're referring to the length of the wood in inches or in feet. But for N less than 1, for edgewood or dowels for example, N equals N. And then we also have finally rough cut wood, where for N is approximately equal to N, where it's described as A over B. There is some interesting history behind the dimensions of milled and dimensional wood. A 2x4 was not always 1.5 inches by 3.5 inches. Historically, it was actually 2 inches high and 4 inches wide, as exampled here with this piece of wood that is from a house from the late 1800s. You can do some searching online to find out what actually happened about the standardization of wood. One more thing to talk about is the length of wood. We talked briefly about 8 feet or 96 inches of wood. Well, actually, if you measure this piece of wood now, which I just purchased, you'll find that it's actually closer to 97 inches longer than 96 inches. So my tip for you is, if you are going to get a piece of wood of a certain length, take a tape measure. I hope you've enjoyed this complex but informative introduction into wood math. If you have any questions, please let me know, and I'll be happy to share more details. So we are therefore left with a very important question. If pi is 4/4, does pi equal pi, 4/4 of pi? Or does 4/4 of pi equal 3/4 of pi? Which would you choose?